Howdy champs, my name is Mohit and people, today I'm going to show you how to make a two-column liquid CSS layout. In fact, let me straight away in Dreamweaver CS6 take you through the multi-screen or the multi-screen preview. Let me hit this button. Okay, and as you can clearly see that we are now able to see the website in different devices. The first one is the phone, which has dimensions of 320 by 300. The second one is the tablet, and the third one is the desktop, right? So as you can see, the image size is scalable as well. The Dreamweaver out here is different in size. I beg your pardon. This image of Dreamweaver is different in size when compared to this image, which is the preview in a desktop, right? So that's the good news. The image size scales along with the area in which it is being displayed. So you see, let me just scroll and show you that everything is just perfect. This is for the tablet, this is the header, this is the H1 element, and there we have some space for the footer. Alright, so everything is just perfect out here. Let me take a browser preview as well. Let's go with Google Chrome first. Okay, just coming up. Let me expand it to the full size of my monitor that I'm using. It's a 22-inch monitor, so irrespective of the size of the monitor, the device, it just occupies the whole space. It's really flexible, liquid in the real sense, right? So out here, the div on the left hand side is 40% of the total width. The one on the right hand side out here is 60% of the total width, right? And you can see it flushes completely from the left edge to the right edge. Okay, and let me then resize it to prove my point that it's completely occupies the whole width available. And not only that, look at the images, the icon of Flash and Dreamweaver, they scale down as I shrink the page. Okay, the good news is, although when I shrink the right edge and bring it towards the left edge, I've set a minimum of 500 pixels beyond which, the page no longer remains liquid, it becomes fixed. So that is something that I can set. Not only that, as I have mentioned, although the images are fluid or liquid as well, they shrink down or they grow up, but I've set a minimum size of 100 pixels for both the images. Though I may shrink down the page radically, but the images will not shrink below the 100 pixels. So that again is something really cool, right? So in the true sense, this is a two-column liquid CSS layout, and those two columns are variable. The one on the left hand side is 40%, the one on the right hand side is 60%. Of course you can change these values too. The images scale down or scale up, but they won't scale down beyond a minimum size specified. They wouldn't grow up beyond a maximum size specified. And we'll look at the CSS how this was actually done. Okay, for the header, which is right out here, I've used a background image, and for the footer I've used a background color, right? So very cool. And now let's have a look at the CSS, which obviously will be available as a free download from my website qualitylessons.net /downloads number one, that is. Again, that is qualitylessons.net/downloads1. Cool. Okay, now let's have a look at the CSS and HTML that accomplish this task. So you have the doc type declaration out here. I'm using HTML5 doc type. So the head, the meta char set, that's the routine way you write it. Okay, so we have the title tag which says my web page. Now I've used internal styles out here. You feel free to keep an external style sheet, which is the correct way of working. Just for convenience, I've kept it as an internal style sheet. So we have the opening style tag and the corresponding closing style tag out here as well with the type attribute. Okay, so upfront out here in line number 7. In fact, let me just shift to the code view completely. You can see I've kept the margin at 0px, so that's taking away the default 5 or 10 pixels, whatever it is. Okay, that's cool. Next up, people, see, notice out here in the HTML of the document, which starts out here, the first div is the top div, the div with an ID top. Okay, so let's see how I've actually styled it. So I have I've used a background image which is stored in an assets folder, which in turn has an images folder, and this is the actual image. I made sure that I repeat it along the x-axis. So from left to right, I've kept the height of the top. Basically, this top refers to the header. The position I've kept as relative, and I've specified a minimum width of 500px, which means that it wouldn't shrink down below this value. Obviously, feel free to play around with this value. Now, I'll tell you why I've kept this position as relative, because inside it I've used an h1 tag, which is this, right? And the CSS for that is that the position should be kept at absolute and it should be displaced 10 pixels from the left. That is why the pound sign, the hash sign top has the position relative, but top space h1, it's a descendant rule, people, h1 inside top should be displaced 10 pixels from the left hand side. So the absolute element inside relative div, right? Now the next division, or the div that follows, has been named middle, and this is the CSS for that, which is this, people, this div, this whitish area. This is middle. Let me show you the yes, there it is. This whole thing is middle, people. Right, let's check out the so whatever is not the top and the bottom is the middle, right? So the minimum width, again, I've specified as 500 pixels, the same as the top. Okay, now let's see what exactly is there in the middle. So we'll need to go to the HTML. So inside the middle, I have yet another div that has an ID of left, which in turn has a nested div which has an ID of 1, which in turn contains this image, which is but this image, people, and some text, which is but this. So it's a case of nesting. Now this nesting is extremely important if you really want all the the images to shrink when you shrink the page. So the structure should be like this, right? So the middle div, which is but everything apart the top and the bottom, which is this area, has in turn a left div and a right div, and the left div in turn has another div with an ID 1, which has this image and some text which goes out here. Similarly, there's a div on the right hand side, so that's div with an ID right, which in turn has another div with an ID 2, so that's the second div, which in turn has this image and some text. Alright, so that is the structure, and right at the bottom we have the footer, which has been given an ID of bottom. So now that we know the HTML properly, let's check out the CSS as well. So the middle has a min width of, or a minimum width of 500 pixels, so it wouldn't shrink beyond this. It wouldn't be liquid beyond this. If you shrink it further, any further, lower than this value, it'll behave like a fixed width CSS. Okay, so let's check the CSS for the left ID in the middle. I've specified very clearly out here the div with an ID left should have a width of 40%. So this one, okay, one on the left hand side, and the div with an ID of right should have a width of 60%, which is this, the div on the right hand side. So that is why we have to, it's a 2-column liquid CSS layout with variable widths 40% and 60%. Again, you can manipulate these values. It could be 35, 65, 30, 70, whatever. Okay, I've also made sure that any division inside the middle div should be floated left. That is why the div on the right hand side tucks itself and sits adjacent to the div on the left hand side. Okay, what else have I done out here? I made sure that inside the middle div, if there's any div, in turn, which if it has any div, so a div within a div, within the div with an ID middle, should have a padding or a spacing of 20 pixels. That is responsible for this whitish area that you see out here. Okay, and should also have a thin dashed light gray border, which is out here. I'm not so sure whether you can look very clearly, but there it is. Okay, just creating the boundaries in a very dull light gray color. And for the bottom div, which then acts like the footer, I have used clear both. Now, clear both is necessary, otherwise this div at the bottom will not tuck itself under or beneath or below the left and the right divs. So you have to clear both the left and the right divs. So people who know CSS well will understand why I've used clear both property and set it to both. Okay, the background color has been set to #666. Now that's your own decision, your own choice, your own preference. I've kept the height at 50. You can play around with this. I've kept the minimum width for this bottom div or the footer at 500 px. Again, feel free to adjust this value. Okay, now I've done something cool out here. I've specified a rule for this image, and the rule says image inside div1, which in turn sits inside div left, which is in the div middle. Okay, div with an ID middle. When I say div middle, div left, it means div with an ID left, div with an ID middle. So the width for this Dreamweaver picture or icon should have a max width of 30% of the total space available for that div. That is why it does not grow beyond a certain size and does not shrink below a certain size, because of the min width property that I've used out here and set it to 100 px. Similarly, image inside div 2, which is inside div right, which is inside div middle, which is actually this image. Okay. Excuse me. I made sure that the max width should not be beyond 15 px, but the min width cannot go below 100 px. So although it shrinks and grows, both these images are scalable. With the actual page width, which is again variable depending on the device size, your desktop size, your laptop size, or your tablet. Still, yet the images that I've used can be scaled in a range only. Right. So that is how the CSS was written for this 2-column liquid CSS layout. I'm going to terminate the tutorial out here. Again, letting you know that the CSS will be available as a free download from my website qualitylessons.net/downloads1, number 1 that is. And let's go with the multi screen preview. Everything is just cool. Let me show you something else. In fact, let me show you a feature phone preview. And yep, so as you can clearly see that in the smallest of the smallest size too, it is absolutely cool. And if I go down to, let's say, a smartphone preview, right, so works just perfect. And that's the tablet preview. All good. All right. So people, as you can see, it's a true pure 2-column CSS layout. It's a liquid one with variable widths for the 2 columns, and the images scale up and scale down, but they have a range in which they can actually do so. All right, which again, let's this time look it up in Firefox before I terminate this tutorial. Firefox takes a little time, a little longer than Chrome to come up. Okay, so as you can see, this is the entire width of my 22-inch HD monitor. And see, as I scale down, although the image size goes up and goes down, but it doesn't go down beyond a certain value. It doesn't go up more than a value that I've specified as the max width. Right. So people, I hope you learned a lot from this tutorial, enjoyed it too. I also hope you'll keep coming back for more. You have a good day. Bye bye. Peace.